Yay! We are live, and thank you for everybody that's coming to join us. There's a chat on the side somewhere here. Make sure to leave your questions for these awesome creators of the new Beastboy and the old. She's not old, but the last Raven. All right. So we are chatting today with Kami Garcia, the writer of these two graphic novels. Hi, Kami, and Gabriel Picolo, who is the awesome, fantastic illustrator. Oh my gosh, I'm like so backwards on this thing. There it is. Woo! It's so amazing. So we're just going to get straight into it because I know people are going to have questions. I have questions. So introduce those that might not be familiar with what Raven and Beastboy are and who they are and what the books are about.
So Beastboy and Raven are both standalones. You can read them in any order. You don't have to have read Raven to read Beastboy. They're basically reimaginings of the origin stories of our favorite Teen Titan characters, Raven and Beastboy. We meet them as regular teenagers. For those of you who are fans of Gabriel's, they wear their normal, cool, like teen clothes, like Gabriel's casual Teen Titans. And they go to school. And neither of them really know about their powers at the beginning of their stories. And so it's kind of the evolution of who they are, what they're doing, and then how they find their powers. And we just announced that the third book in the series is going to be Beastboy Loves Raven next year, where the two of them meet. And
they finally meet.
Yeah, and if you
and also one thing I love about these books is how they deal with having superpowers, which is very, very different for Beastboy and Raven.
Yeah. So a quick question then. So is the third book an actual sequel to these two?
Yeah. So the third one is actually if you imagine, if you do read them both, you could imagine that Beastboy and Raven are taking place simultaneously. One is in New Orleans, and then Beastboy is in a small town called Edenton, Georgia, like you. So so basically, they're happening simultaneously in two different American towns in the American South, and then they are going to meet in Beastboy Loves Raven in Nashville, Tennessee.
Ooh, that is a good place to go and like meet and hang out.
Pretty cool location to draw. Yeah. Also, like I'm always looking up references of Nashville, and it looks like such an interesting place. I've never been there personally.
Yeah, because that's what you guys are working on right now. So you're probably like full on in Nashville. But to backtrack a little bit, because now I'm curious, why Georgia and why New Orleans? And obviously, why Nashville?
So when I first started talking to DC, before I even had Gabriel on the team, they were saying that, they liked my Beautiful Creature series with Margaret Stoll, which takes place in South Carolina, and that a lot of DC books and comics take place in New York or Chicago or LA or Metropolis and Gotham. And they were saying we would love it if you could pick like new places. So I thought it would be fun if I did Southern cities and towns. And then when I found Gabriel's art, he has a lot of art where like there's one that I love where the Titans are like standing outside of like a hotel on the balcony and you can see all these lights at night. And I just knew that like he would be able to totally draw New Orleans, and he knocked it out of the park. And Nashville's even cooler because there's all these like neon lights. And he's like doing the thing that I saw in one of the first pieces that I found of his on Pinterest that I fell in love with.
Gabriel, do you have a favorite city so far?
I love to draw New Orleans because it has this very specific aesthetic. I went to New Orleans after drawing Raven, which was pretty cool to see everything that I had to draw actually existing in front of my eyes. I really want to go to Nashville someday because now I'm drawing it. And I like this American suburbia kind of thing, which is the aesthetic of Beastboy, which is something I always liked. You can see that in my artwork, and I think Kami kind of drew inspiration from that to make me draw these sort of places.
I always try to like pick when I'm writing. Now that I know Gabriel so well, I mean, he stayed with my family at my house. Like, I try to write what I know he will love drawing. And one of the things we talked about with Beast Boy was, what kind of environments he likes and outside. And he was like, I love the forest and nature and like really green and lush. So I wanted to give it that suburban feel. And he does such a great job, even at the high school, of like there's a country fair. And like, I'm sure Gabriel has not been to an American country
Never
fair.
been to one. Never been to one.
But he like nailed it. It's like, there's little stands and cotton candy and like darts, and he totally nailed it.
Yeah, it's funny reading through both of these. It's especially right now in time of Corona. It's really made me miss like friends and just being out and doing things like you said, the fair. If you were to be one of these characters, any of the Teen Titans, who would you pick and what would you be doing right now?
Gabriel, go ahead.
I would 100% be Beast Boy. And by the way, this is super cheesy, but I would be at a zoo to draw because I'm drawing Beast Boy a lot, and I'm drawing new animals every day because Kami put them on the script. And I feel like, I wish I could watch this animal live to draw some sketches, to study it. So I really like, one of the first things I want to do when the whole coronavirus stuff is over is go to a zoo and draw some animals.
Oh, I was thinking about that the other day, going to a zoo.
I miss going to one so bad, especially to draw.
I will say, though, I think San Diego Zoo and a couple zoos have live streams where you can watch some of the feeds of like the great apes and the pandas and stuff. Because whenever I get depressed, I love pandas. I'm not going to make Gabriel draw a panda. It doesn't seem very Beast Boy, but pandas to me they're really foolish. And so whenever this is like advice for all of you kind of fighting the Corona blues at home. Whenever I'm like feeling super kind of down, I just sent Gabriel a video of a small monkey riding a goat, and he is dressed up in clothing.
Super cute.
And then pandas are another one, but in Beast Boy gets a little animal friend that I could not resist, and it's a tiny monkey, and Gabriel draws him. So like, I totally want a monkey now. I know, because Gabriel makes him seem so cool.
Yeah. Kami, who would you be out of the Titans?
I would totally be Raven. That's kind of why I cheated and did her first, because to me, she was the easiest to identify with, because I was kind of a dark, broody teen. But I really fell in love with Beast Boy. He's my second favorite. So I knew I'd liked him, but I was more nervous about him because he's like funny and silly, and I am not as funny and silly. And so I was like, this is going to be really hard. And it wasn't, because like Gabriel and I talked about him a lot, and Gabriel loves him. So it was great because Gabriel was talking to me about like, as a true fan, like I really just want to get to know him. I want to see him do regular things and have problems and not just joke around. So I basically kind of took that as like, Gabriel is the hardcore fan and I love him too. But I was like, what would somebody like Gabriel, who's always loved Beast Boy his whole life, want to see? And we're co-creators for a reason. Gabriel doesn't just get the script and like draw pictures. We talk about everything in advance. He creates the characters. We look at everything. He sends me like reference images. So I think like the kind of our chocolate and peanut butter that makes the Reese's work so well is that we are like true partners. He is as much doing, kind of creating the characters and the story as I am. And so we get like our best stuff together.
Yeah. So how did obviously like things have evolved, and like you mentioned, Beast Boy is definitely Gabriel's like favorite. So the dynamic between your collaboration changed, and how from Raven to Beast Boy?
Gabriel, you want to talk about our collaboration?
I think on Raven, we were kind of learning how to work together, how to do the stuff. Especially for me, it was my first full book, our first big book like this. So I was learning how to compose layouts and working within the time frame that we have to publish the book. So I think on Beast Boy, we had all those things nailed. So we were just having fun, I think. On Beast Boy, it was much, much smoother, right?
Yeah, and I had done novels, but I had never done a graphic novel. So for both of us, it was like our first graphic novel. and our first time working together. So the cool thing is kind of like, you know this, Vanya, like Vanya and I have known each other for a decade. She does my author photos. She was the first person to like photograph me and get me to do interviews and videos way before she had channels. And it's kind of like when you figured, I mean, you were still in college, right? When we met?
Yeah.
So it's like, but it's cool because when you meet someone and you kind of start the journey together, I feel like you learn and you make mistakes together and you figure it out. And we have an amazing team. Michelle Wells and Courtney Jordan, who are our editors, like they totally help us, when we get stuck and we need help. And then, there's like I feel like a lot of it is like gut instinct, though. I think if you love the characters you're writing and you try, I mean, I am much older than Gabriel and you, but remember being a teen really easily. So I try, and I'm a total fangirl of the things I love. So, I feel like if you think about something as from the standpoint of like, I love this thing and I don't want anyone to mess it up, and you keep that in mind when you're working, it really helps.
Yeah. I love that. So we might have a couple of questions. I'm seeing something pop up here. It says, is the plan for this run of Teen Titans novel to stay in the casual everyday realm, or will there be some traditional action adventure superhero stories to come? I can read, I swear.
We have action adventure for sure, but they're not going to suddenly wear costumes.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's a waste of Gabriel. Like Gabriel's very stylish, and his clothing choices and sneaker looks and jacket looks. Like I'm always, people were cosplaying them last year at Comic-Con. So
that's wild.
Yeah, and I think people are also going to see in Beast Boy, like he does change into animals. So like you are going to see kind of classic superhero West Beast Boy.
Yeah, there's definitely superhero-y moments, like action moments on both comics, on both Raven and Beast Boy. But I think we're always trying to do something more down to earth in a way. Like trying not to go too crazy with the superhero stuff. Like they like you said, they don't start wearing costumes all of a sudden.
Yeah. And I love that too. I feel like it's so much more like relatable to see them in their everyday sort of life, and it's not. They're still like obviously larger than life characters, but they're dealing with like real human issues, and I think teenagers need a little bit more of that these days.
Even adults, like I just feel like I wanted to feel like you could know them, like they could be at your school, your neighbor, like they could be real people.
Yeah. What was like the most challenging thing about bringing especially Beast Boy to life?
Beast Boy was way harder to ground him because of like a lot of Raven's powers are not visible. They're not visible in the sense that she doesn't. Sometimes she'll levitate and stuff, but like a lot of her physical being doesn't change as much when she's using her powers. Beast Boy changes into animals, so. Especially in the beginning of the book, before he fully changes, Gabriel and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do we show him channeling powers and the beginnings of a change without actually showing him as an animal. And it was really hard. We came up with ways, but a lot of it is so dependent on the art and what Gabriel's doing to make that happen.
Gabriel, did you have to do any sort of like research, sort of like the anatomy or the science behind?
I had to do some crazy research, especially on the very first moments where his powers are happening at a molecular level. So I had to search for references to draw hearts and anatomically correct veins, and then brains, and then and of course the animals. And I had to make Beast Boy emulate the animals in a way that he does not get transform into them. So that was very complicated. Like create a pose that would resemble that animal.
Wow. Yeah. Kami, how do you like approach a script when you first start working on a project like this?
Well, the first thing for me was how are we going to show that? Like, how are we going to show the powers transform? Because I knew that the outward, Beast Boy himself, one of the things I love about him is, he's a high school senior. It's senior year. He has a bucket list. He wants to be noticed. he's not ostracized, like he's not bullied, but he wants to be noticed and kind of hang out with the cool kids. And he's very small. He has some body issues, which I feel like we don't always see with guys.
Yeah.
And his problem isn't just like I'm short. His problem is he looks much younger than he is. Like he's mistaken for a freshman, and his voice hasn't changed, and he's really bummed about it. He wants to be bigger and kind of look like an older kid. And so, like, you know, the kind of watching him take on dares and do things to try to get noticed, that was easier because I was thinking, you know, we talked about like, you know, like Gabriel and I talked about like him doing like YouTube stunts, like that would be very Beast Boy. But the harder thing was like, how do you show the powers transforming? How do you show powers manifesting that we can't necessarily see? And, you know, in the beginning, there's a big growth spurt, and Gabriel was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and we're going to show him on the bed, and then you're going to see his feet hanging off, and his shirts are too small. And so, like, it was things like that where we would talk, and he would say, like, can you do something like that? And I was like, totally. So I think that collaborating a lot before I would write certain scenes helped. And then also we came up together with this idea of like, he's going to channel the powers before he gets to the point where he can fully transform. And like Gabriel said, he, like, for example, there's one page that just got called out in a lot of reviews. People, it's one of my favorite pages. Beast Boy channels the powers of a cougar. And you see the cougar kind of like transposed behind him as like, you know, it's not there, but it's kind of like what's happening in his body. And then Gabriel has this awesome scene where he's playing dodgeball and you see him kind of like jumping and moving like a cat, you know, like really agile. And it's so cool. And a lot of people have already been calling it out because it's so clever. It's so easy to understand as a reader what's happening.
Yeah, I love that. Let's see what other questions we have. I'm going to look through some of the ones that were left. Oh, come on. Let's see. So, Kami, you mentioned earlier that you, obviously, as everybody knows, you did Beautiful Creatures, and that's a male point of view. Did you sort of draw from those experiences of writing Ethan and now having to write Gar?
Yeah, I mean, I've written a lot. I also did an X-Files book that was from Mulder's point of view. Like, I have 4 brothers, and I have 2 children. I have, my daughter's actually named Stella, but I have a daughter and a son. But I grew up, you know, my sister wasn't born until I was in college. So I grew up with 4 boys around. So I kind of am used to like the, you know, the way boys think. And that was one of the fun things about this. And Gabriel even said, like, I want to show that he has insecurities and stuff, like, and he crushes on girls. Like, we always see the stereotypes of like girls worried about what boys think of them. But like, it's like we act like boys don't worry about what girls think of them. And Gabriel is like, you know, he's like one of those guys who's like, you know, very comfortable. You know, he doesn't believe like guys only act one way and girls only act one way. So he was like saying, like, we want to show his sensitive side and show like, you know, because he does. He's like has this girl he really wants to like kiss and go on a date with. And people were really mad. So like, it's not Raven. And we were like reminding them they haven't.
And the same thing happened with Raven, right? Because she had a crush on a guy there, and it was a Beast Boy. People were like, what is it? Who's this guy?
Yeah,
people are very serious about this ship. So
they're very passionate about it. I love it.
I hope you guys are ready for the next one.
Secretly, we knew when people were like getting mad, we knew we were doing Beast Boy Loves Raven, but we couldn't say anything. So Gabriel's like, oh, they're so mad at us, but they're going to be so happy when they see the new cover.
Yeah. Gabriel, I have an origin question for you. So Kami found you because you were already drawing the Titans. But I'm kind of curious as to what drew you to drawing the Titans.
It was a cartoon that I used to watch. It was my very first connection to American comics, because I was very much into anime and manga, Japanese comics, when I was in high school, and then by that same time I was watching the old Teen Titans cartoon, and that was my first contact with Western comics. I started kind of drawing them in 2016, 17. Then I did this whole casual Teen Titans with them acting, behaving, and dressing as regular teenagers. And I think one thing led to another. Because at some point DC was started to make these graphic novels, and then Kami saw my work, and then I started working for them.
But they were actually aware of his work also. So when I said I really like this guy, they were like, "Oh my gosh, we've been seeing his stuff on Instagram." So it was again interesting how, again, I think it's kind of like a Cinderella story, but it's like if you love something and you just kind of like put yourself out there, people act like, Gabriel's like the overnight success. But if you look at his Instagram, he has been posting regularly for years. Like
been in the hustle for a couple of years.
Yeah. And he did like Inktober and like I feel like, again, like if you love something, and you did the same thing, Vanya, you started with photos and you were doing, photos for authors and then did book trailers. I think if you just keep like doing the thing you love and being really consistent so people see it, that's how you get noticed. Because I don't think you can just do like if Gabriel had just had one cool drawing of the Titans, I don't know if I would have paid much attention to it.
If that would be enough, right?
Yeah, but because there were so many, I was like, this guy can he could do a whole graphic novel.
Yeah,
all the things that he's showing on his feeds.
Yeah,
and more.
Go ahead.
Still on the Teen Titans cartoon, I never shut up about it because here in Brazil we don't have comic book stores like in the US. That was one of the only ways for me to connect with those characters, and that's why I like it so much, and I draw inspiration from it to this day.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was just gonna say to anybody that wants to illustrate or wants to write or wants to get noticed for the work that they're doing, I think, Kami, you definitely touched on something, is to keep working at it. And the adage of practice makes perfect in a way holds true. So keep working, guys. And
there are some things sometimes publishers or comics publishers and traditional publishers have calls, or they'll have internships or things you can apply for. And I feel like you just keep trying and putting yourself out there. And there are artists I've talked to at DC that say, "Oh yeah, I applied for this thing and they totally didn't take me." And but then later they hired them a couple years later when they had more experience. So I just feel like if you can. Sometimes artists, when we did Creators for Comics to benefit comic book stores and indie bookstores, we had a lot of artists just on Twitter saying okay, bid on it and I will review your portfolio for you. And that's a professional portfolio review. So it's sometimes you can enter giveaways for stuff like that. I feel like whatever you can do to get somebody who is in the business to kind of look and give you some advice, and then, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Gabriel, there was a question on Instagram specifically for you about how did you develop your art style? And I'm assuming just working at it, but do you have any other tips on how to kind of hone in on a certain style?
I used to care a lot about this. I used to look at other artists' styles and be like, how do I get a style? How do I get an art style that looks only like myself, only like an original art style? And it takes a while, but it just happens because you already have an art style. Your art style is the combination of the stuff that you like. So how you like to draw hair, how you like to draw hands, and how you like to emphasize eyes or maybe noses, that's your art style. And you can only get to the point where it's noticeable, where it's different from anyone else when you do it. You just have to do it until you start to realize what you like, what you don't like.
Yeah.
So I know it's it's super cheesy. It looks like it's not gonna work, but it does. It's just practice.
Yeah. Kami, that's sort of a similar question for you. How do you, as a writer, hone in on, say, voice, which is the equivalent of a writing style?
Yeah, I think for me, everyone, it's the same thing. I like to read certain types of stories and I write certain types of stories. I write very tight, which is one reason why comics and graphic novels was a very natural fit for me. I don't write a lot of, I describe things, but I try to describe things in an image. you know, like a flowered house coat and, you know, like an old, like you'll see in Beast Boy, an old lady wearing her curlers out front and like waving her, you know, spoon around. Like I try to write very tight. I also love dialogue, but then I like to read other authors who like do tons of description and, you know, write very different than I do. But I think again, the key is like, don't try to do what someone else is doing that doesn't feel natural to you. Do the thing that like, because everyone says like, oh, I don't have a voice, but like you do. And it's like Gabriel's saying, it's about the combination of like what you like and what your perspective is. So like I could never write like probably like a 900-page book unless Margie was helping me. Because I'm like I like to kill people and make stuff happen and like, you know, write about food. And Margie can like, you know, she'll describe the house and the shutters and do other stuff. But it's like, you know, if I write a book, it's not going to be super long by myself. Whereas,
And
yeah.
One thing that you said about the content that the stuff that you like to write versus the stuff that you like to read, that happens with art too. And it took me a while to realize the type of art that I just like to see, to consume, and then the art that I actually like to create. So it took a while for me to realize the difference for that.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say that I get a lot of people who kind of, you know, can be a little snotty sometimes about fan art and fan fiction. And I never wrote fan fiction, but I also kind of got, you know, into writing by accident. I was a teacher for a really long time. But I really believe that like drawing fan art and writing fan fiction, like that is a way to practice and figure out what your style and your voice is. So like writing stories about characters you love, I mean, obviously you're not going to publish them because you don't know those characters, but there's nothing wrong with like learning to write that way and learning to draw that way. And like, if you think about something like Gabriel, like there didn't used to be as much of a market for this. Now, like, for example, by writing, well, people will be like, oh, it was like fanfic. I mean, I wrote a short story about X-Files and about Mulder for an anthology. And it wasn't quote unquote fanfic because they hired me, you know, like I got hired to do it, but it was still like writing in someone else's universe and in their sandbox. And that's what led me. If I hadn't done that and written the X-Files book, I don't think I would have done DC. Wouldn't have done graphic novels with DC. Having so much fun on that project and realizing that I could do that and it was still like I could totally reinvent something in a fun way is why I was so excited to do the work with DC.
Yeah. I love that. In a way, like, I think it's a lesson to be learned just to take a chance. You know, you never know where it's going to take you. And if you love something, show your love for it, whether that's writing fan fiction or drawing fan art. So don't be scared, guys. It'll be all right. So we have a lot of questions. I mean, a lot of questions about whether or not you guys are going to be doing the other Titans.
So we could tell you, but then we'd have to kill you. So
I know. And the internet.
And there's a lot of internet, so that would be a lot of work. We definitely have plans, and we hear you. We've been getting a lot of messages about who should be next. The one thing we
go through the comics through the comments all the time.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is we are not going to do a solo origin story for Cyborg, at least unless someone else worked on it with us, because I really believe that, you know, Cyborg needs to be written or at least co-written like by someone of color. And so like, we would be totally cool to like have him join like one of our, you know, group books or something. If we do that one day, like that would be totally cool. But his own story, I would like to see a writer of color do that. I mean, specifically a Black writer. And I think DC is, you know, they have been so pro diversity with our book because we really care about representation and showing, you know, people Beast Boy is not white, you know, he's Latinx in this book. And they've been really supportive of that. So I feel like they would be on top of that anyways. But we love the Titans, and we definitely want to be able to do more of them too.
Yeah, I love that. Let's see if there were any other questions. Oh, someone wanted to know, and again, like you might not be able to answer this, it's totally fine. Will Beast Boy loves Raven, expand the world is what
Yes.
someone wants to know.
Yes, but we can't tell you how. Yes.
That is a good
I don't know
answer.
if I said this, but for those of you who were excited about Beast Boy Loves Raven or don't know about it, in the back of Beast Boy, there is a sampler. There's a preview of several pages of Beast Boy Loves Raven in the back. So you can read like a little bit. Yeah, you can read a little bit at the back.
That is exciting. Let's see what other questions we have. Let's see. If you guys in the comments here also have questions, do drop them by. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So someone obviously knows that you did not want to do Cyborg unless it's by someone of color writing it. And I guess this is already somewhat answered, but how do you feel about writing a Starfire installment?
Well, I mean, considering Starfire is orange and from another planet, I feel like I'm totally qualified to do that. We love Starfire. I also fell in love a lot with Starfire, also in a different way through Gabriel's art, because she is Raven's buddy in his art. They're like hanging out all the time, and we've had so many, mostly girls. We did have one awesome gender swap. A guy came as Raven, which was awesome. But like we have so many girls, like friends, come as Raven and Starfire, like from casual Teen Titans, like our Raven, and then Starfire from Gabriel's art. And like I just love the camaraderie of like the two of them being friends. It's so sweet.
Yeah. So if you could draw anyone else in any other comic, superheroes or not, what would you do, Gabriel?
I would love to draw other characters from the Titans universe, like maybe Kid Flash. I'm very, very into sidekicks in general, like Young Justice. I would love to draw the cast of anyone from the cast of Young Justice. Yeah. And even like if we're going to Marvel, like talking about the Spider-Man, maybe the X-Men, like those sort of superheroes that are still learning how to use the superpowers. That's what attracts me the most.
Yeah, that's why we love Titans, because they're not pros, they're not experts.
Yeah.
And I love Kid Flash and Aqualad and all of them too, because I like characters that don't have it all figured out.
Oh, we have a good question for you, Kami. How do you balance the gruesomeness of working on Harley Quinn and Joker with the fun of working on the Teen Titans?
Okay,
that's wild. I'm always wondering about that myself. Like, how can you do it? How can your mind be on those two places?
So Joker Harley Criminal Sanity is a procedural adult 17 and over Black Label comic that I do for DC's adult side, where Joker's a serial killer and Harley does not fall in love with him. She's a profiler hunting him. And it's very Silence of the Lambs-esque. It's 7. It's very dark. But to me, the thing that I find really tricky that I've realized about myself is I don't have trouble with that. What I have trouble with is in the middle. So like, I am really good at like super, super, super dark. And I'm really good at kind of like either YA or adult kind of, it's very supernatural, but not like, but still like fun and like, a little badness, but not like, you're like taking out like a massive body count like Joker. What's hard for me is the kind of murky in the middle where people are doing kind of bad stuff, but it's not that bad. Like I'm good at really bad, or like you kind of have a heart of gold. And you saw that in Beautiful Creatures. Like the villains in Beautiful Creatures are either like they're kind of like, not that bad. Like they have a little bit of decency, or they're like rotten to the core. Yeah. And I like that kind of villain, that's kind of, Magneto-esque, like, yeah, I'm doing a bad thing for a good reason. Or I like the one that like there is no redemption and you need to take them down.
Yeah, that's so funny. So I'm going to wrap this up with a bit of like a speed round. Quarantine coronavirus version. Oh, someone asked, will we be selling merch anytime soon?
We don't know. We're kind of
We
not
don't
in
know.
charge of selling stuff.
Right?
It
Yeah.
really depends. DC depends on
Yeah,
DC.
DC is in charge of like merch.
So ask DC. All right, quarantine style speed round. I'm gonna ask you guys, and the first thing that comes to your mind, favorite snack.
Pizza.
Oh,
Kebab. Like we have those in Brazil now. Like we usually didn't have, but now we do, and I love it.
yeah. A favorite candy.
Snickers.
Oh, all right.
Any candy bars. Gabriel drew candy bars in Raven, and I loved it.
I would go with candy bars too. Yeah.
Okay, candy bars. Favorite song.
Eye of the Tiger. It's not really
Oh
my
my
favorite
God.
song, but it does feel to me a lot like my theme song. And it was.
I don't know too many in my head.
You gotta do
I
it
was
fast, Gabriel.
okay.
What was the last song you listened to?
Adults are talking by The Strokes, which is their favorite, their new album. I love it.
All right. Favorite band.
Soundgarden.
Fools.
Okay. Movie you're watching right now.
I've watched Rocky and Creed and all the Rocky movies several times in the last day or two.
Oh wow.
I haven't watched the movie in the longest time. I really need to watch a movie.
For someone who writes, I'm like a TV junkie.
Yeah. TV show then.
Ozark.
TV show, Community. It's great. It's great.
and I still love, even though it's not anymore, I love Orphan Black.
Oh yeah. Oh, I missed that show so much. That was good. A favorite book.
That's really hard. Well, my all-time favorite book ever is The Witching Hour by Anne Rice.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite author is Terry Pratchett, the guy who wrote the Discworld
awesome.
series. I love it. I love it so much.
Okay, awesome. And a last question is, what other graphic novel would you recommend to readers right now?
Well, in DC, two of my favorites are Mira Tidebreaker, which is Danielle Page did kind of a Little Mermaid-esque retelling of Mira, except for Mira falls in love with Arthur, who is Aquaman, and wants to kill him, which is very Danielle. And another one I love that just came out is Wonder Woman Tempest Tossed by Laurie Halse Anderson, who's like one of my all-time authors. I fangirl.
Yeah, that's so good. Gabriel, do you have any recommendations?
I would say Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which is I'm
Mariko Tamaki.
Yeah, no, I'm reading it. I'm saying like I'm reading it and taking a lot of inspiration from the art because it's from Rosemary Valero. I love her art so much.
You loved it like a year ago. Gabriel he just loves the art too in that book.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's so good. Well, I want to wrap up with, let's see if we have any last minute questions here. If not, I will say that you guys pick up this awesome new book. And if you haven't read this, then go get, oh my God, I'm so backwards. Go get Raven. They are basically anywhere. I mean, I've seen Raven in Target. So like
Target, Walmart, bookshop.org for indies. You know, they're available, Kindles and e-readers and all that stuff.
Yeah. So otherwise, where can people find you in case they stumble on this down the road somewhere and want to follow you?
I'm KamiGarcia.com, and that's easy too, because if you go to my site, you can also click on the covers and it will show you a bunch of places you can find the book. And online, like Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Kami Garcia. So I'm pretty much my name mostly.
Yeah.
You can find me anywhere as Gabriel Picolo. I'm on Insta, Facebook, and Twitter.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited I got to have you guys. This was such a blast, and what a good way to celebrate the release of Beast Boy. So thank you for joining me, and I can't wait for the next one. Hey!
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Guys.
Bye.